E-commerce business owners know a successful business keeps customers happy. That's why smart retailers use ShipStation. Turn shoppers into loyal customers with cheaper, faster, and better shipping. Manage all your orders and returns in one place and save up to 90% on rates from all the global carriers. Go to shipstation.com/program to sign up for your free trial. No credit card required, and you can cancel anytime. That's shipstation.com/program.
Have you ever noticed how we tend to avoid talking about suicide until it's too late? It's a topic that a lot of us shy away from. Maybe because it's uncomfortable, maybe because we think it's not going to touch our lives. But the truth is, it affects more of us than we realize. I've experienced this firsthand several times. Just last year, I lost a friend to suicide. And it's one of those heart-wrenching situations where you look back and wonder if there were signs that you missed or things that you could have done differently. And it's not the first time I've been touched by this. In high school, one of my first losses was a dear friend who died by suicide. And then I lost an uncle to suicide. And these experiences have taught me that we need to talk about this now, not later. We need awareness in the present moment, not just hindsight reflections of what could have been done. It reminds me of how people approach physical health. There was a time when we only addressed health issues after they became a serious problem. But now, preventative health is a huge focus for a ton of people. Not everyone, of course, but it should be. And the same goes for mental health and suicide prevention. The thing is, when it comes to suicide, we usually tell ourselves that hindsight is 20/20. We say, if only we had known, we could have done something. But is that really true? Or is it just a comforting lie that we tell ourselves to ease the pain of loss and of helplessness? The reality is, we don't have to wait for hindsight. We can take action now. We can learn to recognize the signs, to have those tough conversations, to create environments where people feel safe opening up about what they're going through. But it's not just about recognizing when someone is in crisis. It's about building a society where mental health is prioritized, where seeking help is normalized, and where we have all the tools to support ourselves and each other through all of the crazy challenges that life throws at us. This is where the field of positive psychology comes in. It's not about denying the existence of negative emotions or bad things. Instead, it's about building resilience, finding meaning, creating connections that can quite literally save lives. Positive psychology teaches us that even in our darkest moments, there are tools that we can use to find hope and to reconnect with our sense of purpose. And really, to remember that life is worth living. It's about creating lives so full of meaning and connection that the thought of ending it becomes unthinkable. But let's be clear, this is not about plastering on a fake smile and pretending that everything is okay when it's not. It's not about toxic positivity or denying the real pain that people experience. It's about acknowledging the pain, sitting with it, finding ways to move through it. It's about understanding that our thoughts have power, that our actions can create ripples of change, and that even the smallest little gestures of kindness or connection can make a really big difference in someone's life. So as we talk about this topic today, I want you to think about your own life. Think about the people around you, your friends, your family, your colleagues. How often do you really check in with them? How often do you ask, "Are you okay?" and then stick around to hear the real answer? And I mean really listen. And even more importantly, how often do you check in with yourself? How well do you recognize your own mental state, your own needs, your own pain? These are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves every day, not just in the face of tragedy. Because the truth is, mental health is something that we all need to be working on constantly. It's about giving our minds a little love. Well, our guest today is Niyc Pidgeon, an award-winning positive psychologist, keynote speaker, business mentor, and author of the book One More Day. She's the founder of the Positive Psychology Coach Academy certification, and she's on a mission to help 1 billion people become more mentally healthy. So 3 key things we will learn today are how positive psychology techniques can be applied to prevent suicide and improve our overall mental health. Practical strategies, including Niyc's 333 system that you can start using today to build resilience and cope with everything life throws at you. And the importance of creating meaningful connections and how small daily actions can make a huge difference in your well-being. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything, work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out, but that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. And you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE.
Suicide is actually the most preventable cause of death. I want to be able to look back on suicide just like I look back on smoking on airplanes. Like that now is like ludicrous. You just wouldn't see it. So my hope is for a vision and a version of a world where we look back and we're like, whoa, like suicide. Remember when people used to do that? And we have the opportunity and the potential to build a society that is so much more connected, where we actually work together, where we have more vulnerability, more conversations about the way that we're feeling, and more implementation and applications of the tools that we know work to protect mental health and actually save lives.
Turn up your frequency with MindLove. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So what guided your life path towards really making it through our darkest times?
It's interesting because my background is in positive psychology, which is the science of happiness and flourishing and how we can do better as people, as within organizations and also within communities. So when I first found positive psychology, it felt like it was the next best, like natural step for me, having previously done sport and psychology. And I loved that it was all about this like happiness and this like vibe. So when I ended up looking at how positive psychology can be used for the times that we aren't feeling good, it felt like a natural progression, but it's also been one that's really, really beautiful in that it doesn't necessarily strike people as the natural thing to do. Because a lot of people think that positive psychology is just about being happy and being positive all of the time. And it's not. It's actually about looking for what's good and the blessings and the lessons in the challenges and the hardships too. So I think that I just got really real. And let me think, when it was probably around 2014, where I was showing up as a positive psychologist that felt like I had to be perfect and be on all of the time, but was actually dealing with some really hard stuff behind the scenes. So it was through my personal integration of those two elements of life, which is real life, that helped me understand that it's not just about the highlight reel. It's actually about what goes on behind the scenes and how we can support ourselves and each other to move through those times.
When people hear positive psychology, a lot of people are now associating that with toxic positivity in a way. And so with your understanding now, after integrating it with some of the darker times, how would you reply to people that have that idea?
I mean, I take a stand for hope and optimism, and I know that we can live better lives when we do focus more on what is good. What's different about toxic positivity is positivity bypasses the emotional depth and connection. So toxic positivity is, oh, I'm fine, everything's fine. Let's not look at that problem. Let's brush it under the carpet and pretend it never happened and kind of go on in this oblivious way. That's actually really dangerous because it will come back to bite you at a later point. It's going to show up. And when you repress and you push down emotions, it leads to this feeling inside of you of almost like you're getting so full up and you're so at capacity, the emotion has nowhere to go. So we see that diseases, like even cancers, can be associated with kind of dealt with emotion. So positive psychology actually looks at what is the emotion? Like, how can I feel it, allow it, name it, claim it, choose to move it? And we have a lot of processes and practices, exercise and interventions that really get us to pause and to connect in with what it is that we're feeling. So I think that I actually love that people are talking about toxic positivity in the context of positive psychology, because it allows us to redress what that misconception is. I put it as a chapter in my new book because I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, we actually need to call this out and we need to deal with it, because the bypassing that I see is not healthy.
I almost feel like toxic positivity is like an initiation phase that we all go through when we're first getting into spirituality.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the depths of things. Like when I'm first reading and I'm only ready for layer one, the way that it integrated was sort of bypassing everything or just keeping a positive face. And I had to feel the damage that could do before I was ready for layer two of that understanding.
And I also think that there's a danger in getting stuck in the shadow as well. So I think that there's this like pendulum swing that happens where we learn manifestation or we learn positivity and we're like, yeah, like everything's good, like I've got this. And then you get hit by life's challenges and you think, oh, I don't got this anymore. And because we've been so focused on only the positive, we sometimes haven't given ourselves the time and the devotion to build the internal resources that really come with the deeper sense of resilience and grit and radical honesty, radical self-awareness. And they're things that we need to make sure that we are practicing as well, because life is always going to keep on lifing. There's always going to be some other crazy thing around the corner. And the positive emotions, they do actually broaden and build our psychological resources. So know that when you are practicing things for hope and optimism and opening up your mind by experiencing more positive, you're doing a good thing as well. And we also want to actively be deepening our ability to cope. Because what I see is that when we focus on only the good, we can get a nasty shock and a nasty surprise when things do get tough. So I think we really want to look at almost like building on both sides of the equation so we can be ready to fully enjoy and embrace life, but also fully understand that the depths of struggle that we can go to are also serving our growth as well when we choose to approach them in a way that doesn't mean we get stuck. I think that when we go into doing all of the, because I'm not a purist. I don't just practice positive psychology. I also have done my trauma work. I'm actively looking at how I can unpack the hard things. But I think we have to remember that those things can be partnered with positive psychology to allow us to hold a context that is lighter through the struggle and through the challenge. I noticed even for myself, I've had hard times, and sometimes you can feel like you're in this energetic kind of overwhelm or contraction that feels really, really hard. And you're so in the story and you're so in the struggle that it almost becomes the way that you do life. So we have to remember that you don't have to suffer. You can have challenges and it can be hard, but you can also get to be playful and graceful and light through them as well.
A couple years ago, my dog of 16 years died. And I remember just the depth of that grief. And for those that don't have dogs, we might not understand. Those that do might. But it was so hard. And I remember feeling grateful for the opportunity to kind of go through something really difficult after I have understood and related to life in a new way. And then this last month, just until like 3 days ago, has been probably the hardest month of my adult life from like 6 different areas. It's still kind of raw. I might cry during this episode, but it has been so interesting to be able to step back and be the observer while still feeling so in it and feeling the stories come and it being a little bit more difficult not to attach to them, but still having that little bit of awareness. So it's like kind of falling in and stepping out. And I have to say, I'm still grateful, even though it's really hard. And my husband and I were like, the world is against us this month. Like, what is happening? The universe has a personal vendetta against us. But I'm curious for you, when you talked about a sort of whiplash when you were speaking with, doing motivational talks on positive psychology and also dealing with deep personal losses. Tell me about how you moved through that, the ways that it sort of changed, maybe how you're approaching your own life and even connecting with your audience in a different way.
Yeah, it's really helped me deepen my own sense of gratitude and gratitude for different qualities and textures in life. So I know with your example, you said that like the universe has been against you. It's also getting us to look at, okay, so what has it been doing for you in that process as well? Like, have you guys as a couple come closer together because of the challenges and the hardships? So I think that the way that I have processed things, so I lost 3 of my close friends who died by suicide. And to go through that at such an early age, it actually made me question my entire career, because it made me think, well, if I can't save my best friends, then what's the point in being a positive psychologist anyway? And the way that I was able to reconcile that was by realizing that it doesn't matter if it's our best friend or a total stranger that I get to support and serve and help. I know that positive psychology does work. I know that because of my own personal experience and also because of my professional expertise. And having been in this space for 15 years or something, where I've got to experience it from all different angles. So I think it's like not moving ourselves into this place of nihilism where it's like, well, what's the point anyway? Like I do all of this work and I show up and I've practiced living my happiest life no matter what. What is the point when bad things happen anyway? And I think that I have developed a stance or a perspective that is the bad things are going to happen anyway. And how do I get to feel through this? Or what is the deeper sense of gratitude and purpose and meaning and connection that I actually get to really be grateful for through it? Because I know through challenges, we do get brought together. Like I feel like I've been brought together closer to you because you've been amazing at asking for support and help. And you're like, actually, I've got this thing that I need help with. Like, can anyone help me with it? And that gave me something because it gave me a different quality to our relationship. It also helped me learn how to get better at asking for help because I haven't always asked for help in the way that you did. So thank you for that. By you demonstrating that, it helped me, and it means that I'll be able to ask for help better in the future. So I think it's looking for those little distinctions and like, how are we actually growing through this individually and together, despite the challenges, but often because of them too.
Shopify's point of sale system helps you sell at every stage of your business. Need a fast and secure way to take payments in person? We've got you covered. How about card readers you can rely on anywhere you sell?
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yep, that too. Want one place to manage all your online and in-person sales? That's kind of our thing. Wherever you sell, businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.
One of my best friends asked me, and it was just like 2 days after I just did a long solo episode about what I had been going through. But last time I saw you, I was celebrating my pregnancy and then we lost it. And it was really hard for me because I thought this one was going to make it and I just miscarried in June. And I had belly and I just did a maternity haul and I really invested in this idea of my future. And so it was like ripped out from under me during the fire evacuations and while my husband was dealing with a medical emergency. And so there was a couple of weeks that we were just like, I can't take anymore. This is so hard. And it was 2 days after my miscarriage and I stayed at our mutual friend's house, angel of a family that took me in while I'm healing. And my friend was like, well, what are you finding in this? And at that time, I was so glad that she asked me at that moment because I actually got to tune in and say, I am not there yet. I can't even get there right now. I'm feeling so hard. And like I said, I was grateful for that because I like being able to relate to people better. And it's almost like I've had like sort of hard things, but I've been sort of floating on cloud nine since I got my shit together, And so I was able to, that little observer in the back was like, wow, that's a good thing to note, you can't. And then it's even just a seed, and it's a seed that was planted then and planted in all of the years of healing that I've been doing. But I started to notice when I could get a little something out of it, when I was listening to a book, and when I was realizing what wasn't helping, and when I was, somebody would say something and I could feel myself sort of latch on. And I think it's so important because I think often, and this is where the toxic positivity or the bypassing comes in, we're like, oh, this really bad thing happens. Let's find out what's in it for me before you're actually feeling. And I was just so aware that this is grief, real grief, and I need to feel that. And then I think once it moves through me, I'll have polished the mirror enough to be able to see what I'm gaining, how this might be serving me.
Thank you. It's so beautiful, such a beautiful reflection, because within grief, there's so much love. So why wouldn't you want to feel that? It's these hard emotions, these big emotions, they don't always feel nice, but what is nice? Like, where did we learn that? Like, where did we learn that having a feeling is a bad thing? And there's so much societal conditioning that we're repatterning and reprogramming through the allowing of the way that we really feel, that, I mean, even in that, like even in you allowing yourself to process, there's something beautiful that comes through. And I think then afterwards we can say, like, what was it about that? Like, was it the process itself? And what you learned about how you want to move through that gave you something that can give your family something, that maybe it's a way that you get to do life differently moving forwards based on what you've really experienced for yourself. I just think there's so much richness in the hard times. There's been times where I literally can't really feel gratitude because I've felt so numb. And we can go into these trauma responses where it's like the freeze response. And I think that's what I previously felt. It was like, well, I'm practicing gratitude, but I can't necessarily really feel it with full connection right now because I feel like there's a certain numbness that's going on. So when I'm feeling that, or when I've felt that in the past, what I've done is, well, what do I actually, it's almost been an indicator. I can't feel this right now. So what can I do for myself that can allow me to feel? And I've moved into some somatic practices. So really simple things like just rocking your body, like laying on your back and rocking your body kind of forwards and back, laying on your front, rocking your body from side to side, laying on your side and rocking your body. Like that can help to reduce the levels of stress. Similarly with breath work. And then I notice when I go back to reconnect with something like a gratitude practice, I can feel it a little bit more. And that the practice of exceptions, like you spoke about, is where am I feeling a little bit more today? Or where did I notice that I didn't have that intrusive thought today? How have things improved, even if it's only a little bit? Those type of questions and inquiry with ourselves can be really, really nurturing during hard times.
I mentioned how with what I've been going through, especially the second miscarriage, it was much more difficult not to allow a story. Or at least the stories were coming into my mind. And so it's hard to just be like, nope, like just kind of throwing it away. What is your process, or how do you guide people through a relationship with that stories, or sort of gently allowing them to move through without feeling like, because sometimes feeling like, nope, I'm not even allowing this, does feel like a form of bypassing, even if your intention is just to not add to the story that's already creating your suffering. So what's the process for that?
I really love to approach life with an energy of curiosity. That is something that has served me in terms of the positive and also moving through these harder times. So let's say, because what happens is when we have a strong emotion, whether it's a high emotion or whether it's a negative contracting emotion, when we make decisions from that place, it can set a new subconscious pattern and trajectory into place. So let's say you're experiencing grief and loss and that real emotion kind of pouring through you, and you decide in that moment there's something wrong with you. It means something about you. There's something wrong with other people. There's something wrong with the world. You can take on that as a certain level of truth. So you have to be really careful in those tender moments to actually be tender with yourself. And that energy of curiosity can help retain a certain level of, okay, well, let's not attach meaning. Let's have the awareness here that these ideas or these thoughts or these meanings are coming through. And also, I get to choose that it might be another 10 different meanings in this place. It's called divergent thinking. So we can get really caught up with it having to be a certain way. So it means this, or it definitely means that. And what if it meant something totally different? What if it meant all of these different versions? And then you get to be in a much more expansive, creative, gentle place with yourself where you're not making a definitive, decisive meaning around something that actually might not serve you in the future.
I love the curiosity aspect because it opens up more questions than just what's in this for me. It could be, where is this story coming from? It could be, what feels good about this story, and not necessarily that the story feels good at all. But you know how sometimes those negative narratives, sort of like even stuff like gossip or your pity party or whatever it is, there's something about it that's addicting. So even if it is creating your own suffering, there's something about it that you think feels good.
Yeah, and I think we can ask, like, what do we need in those moments? Like, what is it I really need right now? Is it that I need to be held? Is it that I need to be heard? Is it that I need to practice loving myself? Is it that I need to rest? Is it that I need to get out and do something where I move my body and I actually get to shift the energy? And I think it really does come down to us practicing new levels of self-awareness. And you talk about that observer effect. Like, I love that. It's like, this isn't happening to me. This is just something that I'm experiencing right now. And when you take that energy off you, and you say, okay, cool, I'm having a human experience here, and it feels a certain way. And this is what I'm feeling, and this is what I'm noticing. Almost like, here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing this and this and this. And let's get curious around those things. And what might be a really good positive step for me to take. And when I say positive step, I don't mean it has to be like action and like go do something. The positive step might actually be in deciding not to decide right now. The positive step might be putting on a movie or taking a nap or listening to Abraham Hicks that allows you to feel a little bit of relief in that moment.
I love the metaphors you use, planting seeds and shooting arrows. Tell us about those.
These were given to me in a real moment of emotion. So I had heard that another one of our friends was struggling, and she was actually probably not going to be here, and she was thinking about taking her own life. And I was teaching on my positive psychology certification at the time when this was kind of going on in the background. And we had a break in the call where we'd done some breakout rooms, and I was in a breakout room with the team when the students were doing their exercise. And I broke down into tears because I felt like it was happening all over again. And it felt upsetting and frustrating and scary and all of the things. And Ali on my team said to me, you know, Nick, you can't always know how a plant is going to grow. You trust that when you plant a seed, it will grow, and it will grow in its own time and in its own way and with its own shape and its own size. And similarly with shooting an arrow, you can shoot an arrow and you can hope that it lands on the target, but you don't always have full control of that. But you do have control of you planting the seed and shooting the arrow, and you trust that it will land somewhere and it will help someone. So we have to continue to keep showing up, planting seeds and shooting arrows, doing our best with pure intention, and knowing that that work that we do will go out and it will activate almost like a ripple effect in the world, because you're pouring in more good energy. You don't necessarily get to control where that energy goes or force it to who it gets to help.
I think that's so beautiful because it took me a lot of years to realize that seeds were still being planted, even if my worst case scenario was the reaction. And so this could be in arguments with a friend and like coming to the table and saying, you know, I'm going to own up to my side, even though I actually believe my side was 5% of the argument. And then them being like, oh, great. Glad you finally got that. or just totally rejecting what I was putting out there, or getting angry or judging me for something. And I think it took through experience of people talking to me maybe 10 years after that and being like, you know, you said this one thing and I know I didn't react well. And then even looking back at my own life, I can think of like 5 different instances where I like lashed out at somebody for something, and then I thought about it for like a year or a decade. And it was a huge pivot for me, just what they said, but they would have never known by my reaction. And so I just love the idea of that trust, because so often, even with our current understanding of planting seeds, we're like, well, that's going to sprout right now. But it's like, I don't know.
Now, it has to be now, sooner, faster.
Yeah, it's like, you know, this season was a harsh winter. Like, spring wasn't quite the same.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's like the trust in that and the practice, and just knowing that this life is way more complex than sometimes we remember. And there's so much good in it, and we get to enjoy all of it. I think that like knowing that hard times are temporary really helps me. Knowing that as well as hard times being temporary, it's likely that there's always going to be hard times. So we develop and we evolve because of these hard times, and we get to learn and grow and take responsibility and be accountable to holding ourselves to those new levels of accountability in our life. And you get to decide whether you want to be the victim to your circumstances, or whether you want to use them to really fortify you with new levels of strength and capability, so that the next time something happens, you've already got those lessons, you've put them in your backpack. You're like, cool, I'm carrying those lessons with me. So when I get this next opportunity to practice learning or practice delivering the things that I've learned, it gets to feel a little bit different, a little bit easier. You get to feel a little bit more capable. And that only comes with experience and with practice. Somebody gave me a really beautiful compliment these last few weeks when I was away on retreat. We were waiting for a taxi to take us to the hotel to go do the retreat days. And 2 of my students came along and they said, can we get in your taxi with you, Nick? I said, yeah, no worries. And the taxi was taking a little bit of a while to arrive. And one of the students said to one of the other ones, said, I'm just downloading Nick's relaxed codes right now, because you're looking at your watch. I can see you getting anxious. And she's just standing there and she's super chill. And I was like, yeah, because I can't actually control how fast that taxi moves right now. So I've decided that even though maybe we'll arrive a few minutes later than I would have liked to, I can't do anything about it right now. And there's no point in me worrying or getting stressed. So I'm choosing to let go of the things that I actually can't control. So I think it's looking at where you've improved, where your life's improved, but also where you've improved, and giving yourself credit for that.
I love that. Yes, that observer is getting stronger in me, and it has been for quite a long time. But I mean, even through the last month, I was very surprised by how I moved through life with everything that was being thrown at me. And so one of the things I'm curious about too, though, is, or that I love to recognize, is I love to recognize how my ideas of things have changed from the beginning to now. And maybe we talked about sort of those deeper levels of understanding that help us to really see things in a I guess more dimensions is what I'm thinking. And so much of your work is around helping people overcome suicide, whether it's the thoughts they're dealing with, whether they are dealing with a loved one. How has your understanding of suicide changed since the beginning of your career, or even that first time you dealt with a loss of a friend till now?
Yeah, I mean, I had a child suicide attempt when I was 11 because I got bullied really badly. And then when I look at the reasons that my friends took their own lives, they'd either been experiencing some sort of depression, or they were experiencing bullying for themselves, like online trolling and people being really negative about them. So I think when I had my childhood suicide attempt, it scared me so much to the point that I felt so much shame and so much guilt around having put my parents through that. And I also have built such an amazing life since then that I know that I would never, ever do that now. So I think my context and my perspective shifted at an early age because I felt all of the feelings that come with a failed suicide attempt. Then, since doing my work and having lost my friends kind of in my late 20s, I never thought that I would become a positive psychologist that was so passionate about suicide prevention. But I've connected the dots and I realize now, like, what is positive psychology? It's all about building a life worth living. And actually, suicide prevention is all about hope, and it's about how we can live better lives. So it seems like it's the thing that actually makes the most sense now rather than the least sense, because I am such a celebrator of life. And I think with suicide prevention, people think that it's just about the crisis moment, and it's actually not. It's about making sure that we live better right now so that we actually never get ourselves to a point where it feels like there's no escape. So actually, the writing and the passion for suicide prevention is actually really a passion for hope. And when you realize and recognize it as that, it becomes the most positive message that we can share, because we can see that whilst right now we have a statistic that is for every person who dies by suicide, 135 people are negatively impacted. We also have, which is a crazy coincidence, for every person that is coached or experiences positive psychology tools, 135 people, the exact same number, are positively impacted by that. So my vision is that we actually are able to shift this balance towards people understanding that there's something that we can do to activate this ripple effect of positive psychology in the world, and that suicide is actually the most preventable cause of death. I want to be able to look back on suicide just like I look back on smoking on airplanes. Like, I remember when I was a kid, you could get on an airplane and people would be having a cigarette. Like, that now is like ludicrous. You just wouldn't see it. So my hope is for a vision and a version of a world where we look back and we're like, whoa, like suicide. Remember when people used to do that? And we have the opportunity and the potential to build a society that is so much more connected, where we actually work together, where we have more vulnerability, more conversations about the way that we're feeling, and more implementation and applications of the tools that we know work to protect mental health and actually save lives.
It's so wild to think because it's not really. We think that big change is crazy, but I love how you brought in an example where we're like, no, there's so many things in this world where we look back and we're like, I can't believe that used to be okay. And now there's a lot of things that I wish were those same, followed those same trends. But also the connection that you talk about. You mentioned how I reached out in a way that you don't often see. And it's funny because in the solo episode I just did, I mentioned how those times are so hard because I know that the only thing that I'm craving inside, like the pull that I'm getting, is some sort of connection. Like I need to connect with people. And I actually joined a support group first because I was like, all right, I don't want to burden people with what I'm going through. But what happened is that I joined a support group and I realized it wasn't going to be helpful for me because it was a lot of people there that were there because they were hurting, not because they were hopeful. And that I just have a totally different understanding of how I want to work through things than where I was meeting people at. And so I was like, if I'm going to reach out to anybody, I want to reach out to people who are on the same path as me, who have the same spiritual understanding as me, who I can actually get real help from with targeted questions. But I think that's one of the things that makes suicide so difficult, is that people don't want to burden other people with what they're going through. And so they let it get worse and don't really show an opportunity for people to help. And then there's a lot of misunderstanding with those that are in the lives of those people. I'm thinking to the first friend I lost of suicide. When he died, I was angry. And mind you, I was only 16, but there had been a full year of my best friend breaking up with him and him threatening this. And so we had spent a full year in the, why are you doing this? It seemed like only emotional manipulation. And then he actually did. And so my teenage brain interpreted this as, oh my gosh, like he even called her and did it while on the phone with her. And it just seemed like, and on the anniversary of the day her mom died. And so my brain was like, this is like the epitome of the final manipulation straw. And I volunteered as a suicide and crisis counselor so that I could get a deeper understanding. And I'm so glad I did, because that wasn't the first time that I would deal with that. But it did change the way that I related to that experience. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions with for those who don't deal with those types of intrusive thoughts when it comes to people in their lives that are struggling with that?
Yeah, I think that it is like, it's a path that we have to walk gently together, because it is something that we're not traditionally trained in. It certainly wasn't a conversation in schools or within the family home when I was growing up. And it can be challenging to know the right words to say when someone is suffering. But I think, like something you said before, you said big change. I think big change actually starts with small change. And I think that we can practice being better and showing up and doing our best in the way that we are able to support ourselves and each other. So with suicide, I mean, so much comes up around it being selfish, or it being something that people are doing for whatever reason. What I've learned through the study that I've done is that suicidal thinking is temporary. Okay. So if you can hold on to that hope for long enough for that thought to pass, then you can actually start to do something to feel better. There's also a lot of evidence to show that most or all suicides, there's evidence to show that people want life. Right at the end, they decide that the decision isn't the decision that they want to make. So I fully believe that the human spirit wants to live. And when I knew that, it really brought me to the question of like, why I do this anyway, or why are we a stand for life? Like, why do we have first aid or first responders? And on the spiritual perspective, it's we're all one. We are all one, and life should be preserved and be fought for. I think that there's a lot of apathy and there's a lot of ignorance in the conversation of suicides and mental health specifically. I've only spoke with 2 people, okay, over all of the years, who had the luxury of saying to me, Nick, I've never had a mental health problem. I've never had a thought about anything like that. I don't understand mental health. And I was like, that's great. And most
Aliens.
people, yeah, aliens. And honestly, like I did a book launch event in London a few weeks ago, and I had a line for people who wanted me to sign their books. That line took me 2 hours to get through because every single person in the line had a story where they'd been impacted or someone they love had been impacted by mental health and suicide. So I actually think that there's more of a risk for us not to talk about it. And there's more of a risk for us to assume that everyone's just doing well. Because when we really get into it, we realize that this thing that seems so personal is actually very universal. And the more that we talk about it, the easier it is for us to actually support each other in it. And one of the easiest, fastest things that we can do is getting better at asking the question, like, how are you doing really today? And what is it that you need? And how are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And when someone shares, like, I'm a 4 out of 10, you say, okay, cool, tell me about that. It's these ways to open conversations, whether it's with each other as friends or with our kids, with clients, actually not being scared to ask for the real thing, the elephant in the room. Like, okay, cool, like you don't sound all right on this message. What's going on? Tell me. And what I learned is that in relationship, we're actually robbing our friends or our family members of opportunities to show up and show how much they love us and show up and be a good friend or be a good family member when we don't share what it is that's really going on. It took for me to have some of our friends come to my house once and say, listen, we know you're not okay. Come here, give me a hug, tell me what's going on. And honestly, our relationship has thrived so much since then because it gave me so much relief to be able to just be honest and just say, like, this has been a really bad day. And you feel like you're in it together then, and you don't just have to figure it all out alone.
That was one of the biggest things that I gained from this last month is I realized that I have more support than we often give ourselves credit for. I mentioned that it's like we're all holding on to these invisible life preservers, not realizing that we're surrounded by a sea of helping hands that want to show up for us. And on one hand, there's the Benjamin Franklin effect, where when you ask someone for a favor, they actually psychologically like you more. And then on the other, though, I think we're all living in these stories and then self-perpetuating it like we're going to be too much. And that's something that I've heard my whole life. And I've just always had this thread of loneliness from being an only child and moving around a lot. And so I've carried it with me into adulthood, where it's like, even though I have different evidence now in my adult years, and now that I'm not just making party friends all the time, the story that my mind wants to grasp onto is still, you're alone. You have to go through this alone. And so that was one of the things where when I found myself falling into the story of like, the world is against me, it's like, look who showed up for me here that didn't have to.
Give me chills, you saying this.
My mom drove out in the middle of the night to pick up my kids. A friend that I had never hung out with on my own before invited me into her home for 5 days. I somehow managed to lead a retreat, and I was so afraid to tell these women what I was going through because I was worried that they would think their investment was compromised, that I was too broken to lead this. And so I was debating not sharing about it until later on, or not sharing about it at all. But the first night, all the women started talking about how they were drawn to me because of my vulnerability. And so I just knew I had to share right then. And it was then that I could feel my own armor come off. And yes, I still led the retreat just fine, but I also could be myself. I could lean into people if I needed it. And one of them sent me flowers while at the retreat. Like, it was just this everywhere I went, there were people that were putting out their hands, willing to catch me in case I fell. And in those situations, I realized that that was what was helping me stand strong, just knowing and just feeling. And if I would have kept it all to myself, I think it would have been much more difficult to not cling to this narrative that I was broken and alone.
And when you ask for help in the WhatsApp group as well, I just love that because the way that you framed the question, you were like, this is really random, but, and then you got 3 or 4 really specific, helpful answers. And it just helped me learn so much. I was like, whoa, even if we've got a really kind of out there question and you ask it in community where you know that you're supported, then you can actually get way better answers than if you had sat there on your own trying to just figure it out. So I think that was a really beautiful learning and lesson for me. And I never would have got that lesson unless you had asked the question.
I actually got like 11 responses, but people sent me a lot of personal messages. And so, it hugely helpful. Things like exact protocols of psychedelics to help my husband's cluster headaches, people to call, a neurosurgeon to call, a new medication to try. So now between this cluster series that just ended and the next one, we have all sorts of things to figure out. And if I had known, or if I wouldn't have done that, I would have still just been searching Reddit threads by myself.
Yeah.
What do you think about how to ask people? Because it kind of reminds me of the support group versus the asking here of who to ask and who might make it worse and who might actually lead you on the right path.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come up. So first of all, it's remembering to ask in the first place. I think when you're suffering and you're struggling, it can feel really hard to think about what to do. So I actually love to plan in advance. So when you're in a phase where you do have a little bit more clarity or a little bit more capacity, how can you develop the protocol then rather than waiting until it's too late? So I say, like, who are your 3 people or your 3 places that you can identify that you can go and ask for or look for support within? So it might be who it is that you feel like you can be your truest, ugliest self with. Who is it who is always cheerleading you on? What are the communities that you feel really safe and held and heard within? And writing out your top 3, or you might have a list of 20 go-tos, but for simplicity, 3 is a great place to start. Then I say, what are your 3 kind of go-to tools or gateways that you can use? I call them gateways because, again, when you're in a place of really struggling and suffering, it's hard to think about, right, I'm going to go and do that morning ritual that takes 45 minutes. It feels too hard. Like you can't get there at the time. But if you've got 3 simple gateways, so a gateway tool is something that feels like you can reach for it in your hardest moments. So for me, it might be putting on a breath work and listening to something and actually doing the breath work with the audio. It might be as simple as putting on my favorite music and not necessarily needing to go from 0 to 100%, but knowing that I'll experience a micro shift with that will then open me up to doing the next thing. And then I say, like, what are your 3 action steps? So after your 3 gateways or 1 gateway, what do you know is the thing that is going to make you feel better? So for me, it's moving my body. I know that if I jump on my Peloton or go outside for a walk, I'm going to shift the way that I feel. But I call it a 3-3-3 system. Trying to think of all of those things, like, right, I'm going to call these people, or I'm going to text these people, or I'm going to go and do these things. It's too hard when you're really in it. So you know who your 3 people are or your 3 communities, and you start to get practice with how you ask for help. So it might not be sending a big long text with everything that's been going on. It might be as simple as saying, hey, I'd really love to share something. Can I share with you? or hey, not having a good day, would really love your support. The starting of the conversation is often the hardest and the simplest step. So if you can practice what it is you would say to open a conversation with those correct people, then it can become easier for you to receive the support.
I think that's a really good just lesson, because so often we don't really realize the contagious nature of emotions. And so that's beautiful in when it's on the positive side, and it can be a lot. And so it's like that for me is the balance of, all right, if I'm going to reach out, am I going to just hit somebody? Like they could be having the best day with their toddler, and then they get everything that's going wrong in my life in a text message, and it's just like whoosh, like their energy drains out. So to give somebody that little, hey, do you have time to talk, or I really need support? It's like they can actually plan out their day. Okay, I'm going to finish up my presence moment with my kids, and at 4:00, I can have space for this.
Yeah, and I think that it's such a good point, because we get to also practice our own personal boundaries and what we need in order to be able to show up in relationship to really support and give to others too. So the whole idea of suicide prevention or helping each other to feel better has to start with us helping ourselves to feel better first. Because if we're constantly always looking to fix or save, or we're on this big crusade, you're going to end up depleted, and you're not actually going to be very much use to anyone when you're operating from that place. So the way that I think of it is, how can we build strength within ourselves first so that we can dedicate the time to having, I don't know, 4 till 5 p.m. to speak with friends, to help and support and connect with what they need, rather than being in this place of, I think of it as like a leaky bucket. Okay, I'm going to help everyone with everything all of the time, and then I've got nothing left for myself. It's like then your mental health gets impacted. So how can we also get practice with communicating in a way that our friends know that even if we don't reply straight away, we will reply by the end of the day, or we will reply when we have capacity to meet each other in a conversation that is able to be productive and supportive without us negatively impacting ourselves along the way.
Another concept you talk about is grounded hope versus empty wishing. Tell us about that.
Yes. So hope is an interesting concept. It's like, the energy of ambition. It's like, I want something, but I'm not there yet. There's hope where you can just blindly kind of hope that something happens. But grounded hope actually comes through a deeper knowing and a practice of the cultivation of it within your body. So they've actually done studies on this that look at the difference. And it's this idea of, okay, we're going to practice a tool, or we're going to do an exercise that helps us really connect in with the feeling of hope, and where we hold that as a sense of power and capability within ourselves, rather than it just being all kind of from the mind and it being an idea and it being intangible. So an example would be, rather than just saying, oh, I hope it works out, how could you actually practice scripting and writing out and meditating on a best possible version of an outcome, where you've been able to connect with it through your body in the writing practice, and then assimilate it through a meditation, which allows you to really feel it inside of yourself, boost your well-being, cultivate the positive emotions that are associated with it, so that now you're coming from a place of it being more of a knowing than a blind wish or a hope.
Yeah, I love that, because sometimes it's like that empty wishing feels like the toxic positivity or the manifesting past what we're actually going through. And so grounding it into our real life, even finding evidence that, things have worked out before, or of our own resilience can be so helpful. So we've covered so much today. I love to leave listeners with one thing to focus on, to kind of ground everything into their reality this week, whether it's a thought experiment or an actual action to take. What would you leave them with?
I love having a menu of tiny tools that you can use within your day. So you can brain dump a list of all of the small things that make you feel good and look to that list to experience a shift, rather than it needing to be a prescription or a protocol where you have to do it every single day in the same way. My invitation is to actually get practice with doing some good things for you, whatever it is that feels good from that list on that day at that time. And I think that feels way easier and way more nourishing than this energy of forcing or have to do. So my notes section of my phone is just like, it saves me every day because I go in there, I'm like, right, okay, not feeling great right now. What can I do? Here's my list. Which 3 or 5 or 1 things can I do? And then over the day, you look at all of the tiny little steps that you took, and you know that those small positive steps, the actions that you take, compound to massive results over time. So it's developing the trust that that small change will actually create the big change for you.
Well, thank you so much for being willing to lean into your purpose and see where life was steering you with the hardships that you went through, combined with all of your education around positive psychology. So if people are interested in connecting with you more, whether on social or finding your book, One More Day, or your website, where's the best place for them to connect?
Thank you. So website is niyc.com. The book is available in all bookstores, so Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon, and you can also get it from onemoredaybook.com, where there's also some nice bonuses on there as well. But I think for the book, like the biggest thing is it doesn't feel like my book. It feels like a book for the world. It's something that is so important and so needed right now, whether it's for yourself right now, or it's for a loved one, or it's for someone in the future. You never know when a child or family member or friend might be struggling when they really could do with these tools.
All the links to this episode are at mindlove.com/372. Your challenge for this week is to check in with yourself, or better yet, check in with someone else. I want to make that a habit of really asking people, how are you really? What's going on in your life? What are you dealing with? And there's a balance to this. We don't want to go into a party and be like, please open up your deepest wounds. But we also don't want to just keep pretending everything's fine when it's not, because we miss the opportunity for real connection. We miss allowing people the gift of connecting with us and giving us help. So just challenge yourself with your beliefs around this topic, with your beliefs around what you think is socially appropriate, and just play with it. And by that, I mean, play with different ways of being. Maybe something else will fit better than what you've been doing your whole life. I also want to say thank you so much to everyone who reached out to me after my share in episode 369. So if you haven't heard that, go back and listen. But I didn't realize how much it would be an opening for people to come to me with their own struggles and to share things with their loved ones because they were inspired by me so openly sharing. So I'm so grateful for anyone who reached out, told me the impact that it had, and connected with me around their stories around loss. You can find all the links to my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. I would absolutely love if you connected with me on Instagram. I do a lot of conversing with you all in my DMs there, and that's at mindlovemelissa. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.
In the time it takes you to actually board a flight from Group 8,
Now boarding Premier Altitude Elite Club members.
you could have bought a Hyundai on Amazon. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Limited availability, pickup through participating Hyundai dealer in select markets.